call the April 9, 2012 work session for the Frankfort Board of Commissioners to order. And clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. Wilder?
Here.
Mr. Hedden? Here. Mr. Turner?
Here.
Mr. May?
Here.
Mayor Graham?
Here. So we all present and planning board. Thank everyone for being here today. Glad to see you all the time. First order of business is citizen comments. Citizens address the commission about topics on the agenda. And so if you want to address the commission, we'd ask you to come up front here and have a seat and then identify yourself for the record. So do we have a citizen comment?
Mr. Mayor, oh, I'm sorry, were you pointing at me?
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, it's been suggested I might wait until you get to the landlord-tenant issues before I make comments.
Okay, have another citizen comment.
Yes. Do I need to sit up here?
Yes, sir. Please, for the record. Yeah, just mention your name.
I'm Brent Swager, and I'm the chairman of the Second Street Task Force for the Form Code project. And tonight, I guess I wanted to give you guys a little bit of an update. I haven't been here since I believe since the task force started, and also I have a request to make to the commission. We've been working with the consultants on developing the draft. We've been getting those drafts in from them. I've been working with the staff in planning, Gary and Maya have been working, reviewing those drafts and providing comments back to the consultant. And so the drafts are getting into pretty good shape. It's about ready to go out and go public, share it with the public, get comments back. It's taken a while because we really wanted to get it in a good place where people, where the staff felt comfortable with content and the process that would be used to review future development requests and within the study area. So with that, I think that Gary is planning on organizing public meetings with the property owners, and allowing them to meet one-on-one. And then there will be a public meeting to share the draft, and it'll be open to anybody, of course. One of the things that we've realized that's pretty critical to help people understand what we're talking about is, and for people to really be able to picture in their minds what could happen out there, what is the potential for this code to do. We really need to have some visualizations to be able to take out there, some pictures to, for instance, take a vacant site and what could be built under the new form code regulation. So what is the variations that could happen? How small or how big could it be? And different type of architecture could happen. Those kind of things. So, and I think it'll give people an opportunity to understand it, but also I think it'll help everybody see what a good thing this is in the end. Unfortunately, visualization costs money. And so what we've done, or what the staff has done with the concurrence of the task force, is they issued an RFP, request for proposals, about a month ago, and received one proposal back. And so we've reviewed it. We feel like it meets what was put into the RFP, the requirements, and I guess we'd like to request that the commission fund that proposal so that we can develop these renderings. RFP asks for renderings to cover 2 different sites on 2nd Street, so it'd be more commercial and mixed-use type of properties. And then after we got that proposal back, we were talking, staff and I were talking, and think that it might be wise to look at 3 different sites rather than just 2, one of which would be more in the residential area, just off of 2nd Street. So if the form code was applied in the residential area, how would a new home or new building in that area fit, and what could it look like? So The proposal came in at $6,500. Staff came back and asked the one proposer what it would be for an additional site, so that we have 3 total sites, and that total would be $7,500, some extra $1,000. Everybody was kind of surprised that it came in actually that low. So it seems like the overall proposal was a reasonable amount. We'd like to get this going as soon as possible. It'll take a little bit of time to get the renderings done. I think it's a month or a month and a half. The proposal and talked about getting input back and forth with the task force and staff, so that they would show progress and would get feedback from us, and then they'd alter their drawings based on their feedback. So, but then we could have those drawings to then take to the public meeting, which I think is going to be. I think it would be really important to have. I think it would be really useful to have to share with people at that meeting, rather than just two-dimensional types of drawings. And I wanted to throw that out. If that's something that you all thought would be a good idea, possibly under new business tonight, you could talk about maybe putting it on a special meeting coming up shortly. Just like to throw out that idea to you.
The Commissioner will make any kind of response at the present time. Commissioner Wilder.
Got some questions.
Sure.
I think we all understand that visualization is kind of inherent to any form code. I assume that there are, based on what you said, I assume that there already are plans that have 2D visualization.
Yeah, that's part of the code naturally. So it'll show, it'll show things like the heights of buildings or the setbacks from the street that are required and that type of thing.
Within that context, would that include examples of existing space, or would it just be kind of generic?
It's pretty much a generic thing from what I've seen, yes. And I'm sure Gary could answer that one. I think he's going to be here later.
Well, I guess my other question would be for Gary, which is the extent to which we have money in the existing budget.
I don't think from my conversations with him, I don't think that in the planning and building codes department that they have very much. I think they might have a little bit, but he'd have to answer that more specifically.
Do you think he is going to be here?
He will be here.
Okay.
He'll be late.
That's all.
Another question?
I'm happy to pick this up again.
Okay. Either you need to say something right now?
No, we can't use anything right now.
Okay. All right.
No other questions?
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Any other citizen comments? Okay, seeing none, then let's move on with the agenda.
Thank you. Commission has received the tentative agenda and had time to look that over, and staff has too. Are there any additions or deletions, changes?
I've got a request to add
Do you
2
mind
items.
coming up, please?
Sure. I'd like to request add 2 items to the agenda. First is our street resurfacing unit price contract with Harold May. We opened bids a week ago and put on the April agenda so we can get started on our street resurfacing program. We posted a public hearing and invited public comment back if there was any streets that someone felt they would like added to the list. And didn't have anyone come to the public hearing, but we're still taking requests, and we anticipate spending about $250,000 this year on resurfacing. So we can put it on the April agenda and we can get started with that.
Any objections to that? Okay, the second thing?
The second thing is our sidewalk replacement program. We met with Columbia Gas, and they would like to get started on replacing a gas main on Myrtle Avenue, which we have as a high priority project. We would like to go and resurface the street and rebuild the sidewalks because they're in pretty bad shape. And in talking with Columbia, they would like to partner with the city if they would let us you know, they were gonna cut the street and put their gas main down the street, and that causes all sorts of parking problems and traffic problems. And I asked them about what about the sidewalks, because they did some gas main repair under the sidewalks on East Main Street, and we got all new sidewalks where they did the work, so the good program. And they said, well, that sure costs a lot when we, you know, the concrete is really our big issue. And so in our replacement program, if someone would like to request a project outside our project list, we'll participate with them. We'll pay their concrete bill if they'll pay the labor bill. And so the Columbia Gas would put in new curb and gutter on that side of the street if we would pay for the concrete. And so we would like to add a purchase order to Harry Concrete. We both got quotes for $40,000 worth of concrete with what it would cost. And so we would like to add the PO to the April agenda.
Have any objections to that?
Sounds great.
Mr. Lloyd, you agree with this?
And where would the funding come from?
Municipal aid on
Okay.
both agenda items.
Thank you. Are there other staff requests?
I have two items I would like to add. One is an annual letter of commitment for DFI. Britain brought the letter by, I think, late last week, and they actually need to send in their application for the Main Street program, I think in the next couple of weeks, so we'd like to go ahead and get the mayor's signature on the letter of commitment. There's no dollar amount attached to this, it just says that we will support the project and supply monetary aid as needed or something like that. It's not, there's no actual dollar amount, but we've always signed it in the past, but I just want to get sure I was okay before we have them sign that. And we will put it on the agenda for...
Is it standard operation
Yeah,
procedure?
but I just want to make sure we...
Objection?
The other is a memorandum of understanding with the county for the Justice Assistance Grant. That's a law enforcement grant that we get pretty much every year. We share that with the county. The last 2 years we have used it, and Chief Willwood has agreed this year with your all's blessing that we let the county use it this year since we've had it the last couple of years. So, and I'll send that to you. That's all.
Okay, thank you.
Other additions or requests? Mr. Splister?
I have a request. The plant board sent over an easement. They want to have a water easement, and I've reviewed it, talked with Bill Scaff about it. It does cross one of our sewer mains. Bill is fine with the language of the easement as we tweaked it, and I would like to add it to the consent agenda. And again, this is an easement for a water line for the plant board.
No, no, sir.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
Anything else? That covers it, Mayor.
Now, bring it down to staff comments.
We do have some staff reports. Let's see, Randy, do you have anything to report? Mr. Donahue? Personnel, human resources.
Frank kind of asked me to give you all an update about the wellness program that we talked about a couple months ago. Wells Fargo was in February, and we have formed a committee now with representatives from most every department. Our first meeting is tomorrow. We continue to have discussions with the TPA about what kind of things they can do versus what kind of things a vendor from outside would need to do. I've looked at several employee questionnaires or survey type instruments, and that's part of what I'd like to task the committee with, is to help pull together maybe a subcommittee of them or something, so that we can make sure we get every employee's input, not just members of the committee. I just sent it out late last week. I think Rob was out of town for a couple of days, but I was for legal opinion to make sure that we're not going to run into issues with incentives. most of the vendors that talk to us talk about how much better participation you can get if you offer T-shirts and keychains and water bottles and all the, things to get people to do things. And so we want to make sure that we're kind of clearing the path in front of us for that, so that we don't look back over our shoulder and say, oops, we shouldn't have done that. But things are progressing pretty good. I had another conversation with the TPA, in fact, this morning, about some of the vendors that they've worked with and some of the things that they've done and how they've worked. So I'm looking forward to tomorrow's meeting. There's 14 or 15 employees plus Tammy and I, so it'll be a good sized group, I think. And if we figure 2/3 to 3/4 of the people show up, it'll make a manageable sized meeting every time we get together, without it being too big or too little. So that's it on the wellness thing. And just besides that, in HR, we are starting discussions also about the 2013 health plan. They're pretty loose at this point, but probably in the next couple of months, Wells Fargo will be wanting to come and talk to you all about what kind of tweaks you think they would like to recommend or they think we need to do. And I think some of this is going to drive off your budget discussions in the next 2 or 3 months. There's going to be an expenditure line in there for health benefits, health and medical, and somehow we have to try our best to make our plan shoot to hit that budget target. So, but that's, like I say, the discussions are pretty non-specific at this point, just talking about general things. That's about it for my shop, I think.
Thank you for that.
Chief Fawcett, do you have any report? Jim? Dawson? Jeff, everything else?
Just real quick. Saturday the city hosted Reed Forest Frankfort up at Cove Springs Park, and is well attended by all. Handed out trees and had food and vendors and displays. It was a beautiful day. And a lot of you all came as well, and it was a nice event. So it was a good showing of people.
How many trees got planted?
I don't know how many trees they planted or handed out, but
I heard 2,000. That's what I heard. I don't know where the source came from, but I heard 2,000 planted and maybe 2,000 handed out.
It's definitely out of the floodplain this year.
If not, we're all
But it's one of our most popular events that the city, we host it with other agencies also that participate. It's a well-received event by the public, so a lot of people.
Yeah, a lot of people to 28. Thank God for the
And Andrew Kamek, of course, puts it all together along with other agencies.
Jilson, do you have anything for IT?
No, sir.
Thank you. Rob, you have anything?
No, sir.
Chief White?
No, sir.
Rebecca Hall with grants.
I'm representing myself and Bill Scout, who did not want to come up because he said you'll have to listen to him so much later. We didn't know from now. We applied for a 2010 disaster recovery grant with the CDBG funding for stormwater in the Home Street area. And we received a letter last week that said we did get funding for $600,000. So I just wanted to announce that too.
Great. Mr. Scout, do you have any comment this time?
Yeah, you'll hear enough from me later.
Don't think we've left anyone out there. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Whisper.
If I could add one more thing, I apologize. We've gotten documents, signed documents from Pensley Railroad Company where it is now ready to convey the former Frankfort Cincinnati rail bed to the city of Frankfort. And of course, we've been working on that for some time. And I would like to add the agreement with Pensley and the quitclaim deed to the consent agenda. And those documents would be signed by the mayor, and then at that point in time, I'm sorry, Brent left some moments ago. Is he still here? He's here. But in any event, this would allow the folks to start work on at least this part of the pedestrian and bicycle trail from Kentucky State University to downtown. So I'd like to add that to the agenda. And we have, just in way of report as well, we have been sending communications with CSX and have not received any communications back recently, so we will get on the phone and actually call them because they have not been responding to our letters or emails, at least in the last several weeks. So.
Thank you very much.
Mayor, there's one other thing to report. In a prior city commission meeting, the city commission received a communication from R.J. Corman about the crosswalks, and R.J. Corman has sent a communication to us that they have decided on the option of lowering the track. So they're going to lower the track across that section rather than redoing the crosswalk.
That's it?
That's it.
Okay. Thank you very much for all the reports. Now we're down to the old business. And first item on old business is discussion of the employee compensation policy. Mr. Moore.
If you'll remember, Mr. Dawson was asked for some information that he distributed some time ago about the compensation cost and the possible cost of reestablishing the longevity. And some commission wanted to discuss the compensation policy tonight.
Commissioner Wilder.
Still in line trigger. I think there's actually two elements to this discussion. One of them relates purely to longevity pay. We all got these worksheets a while ago giving us a breakdown on the annual cost for the sort of longevity pay within a 3-year and a 5-year time frame. I assume everybody's had a chance to absorb these numbers. I was hoping we could sound off on those. But before we even get to that, there's another kind of more specific issue that's come to our attention a few times before, and we've expressed some general interest in addressing. That has to do with the promotional process for new hires, particularly this is a concern we've heard from a number of firefighters. If you don't mind if I just, to get everybody on the same page, just read a quick section of a letter that Lieutenant Briscoe sent out a while ago.
Who's you from?
From Wayne Briscoe, from Lieutenant Wayne Briscoe with Fire and EMS. But this is a concern that we've heard from a number of folks across the board. That section 37.39, personnel actions and salary adjustments, subsection A, allows for those that satisfactorily complete the 6-month promotional period to receive a 1% increase in salary through June 30th, 2012. Then effective July 1st, 2012, that salary increase will be the same as for other longevity increases as approved by the annual city budget. With the approval of this amendment, there have been unjust actions on those individuals previously promoted as they were not given the same salary increase upon the satisfactory completion of their probation period. Therefore, a newly promoted sergeant will be making 1% more than a senior sergeant, excluding longevity increases that compounds with subsequently promotion through other employment. So, in other words, this is the concern that we've heard from a number of folks in the department, that under the current system, there are circumstances where new hires are getting essentially paid more than some folks who have been there for a while. And I think that's something we all understand to be a big morale buster in the department. I don't think there's anything we can do about the fact that that's already happened. But I think we should address this going forward. I know it seems that a lot of guys in the department do have a problem with it. I understand where they're coming from. I mean, on one hand, I wish that people wouldn't care what anybody else thinks. They should just worry about their own salary. But I understand how it shakes when somebody works hard and sticks around a while to get the promotion and then see somebody else come in.
Mr. Donahue, would you like to come forward and maybe shed some light on this?
That particular provision of the Chapter 37 was put in as one of Mercer's recommendations. One of the things that they had noticed, and frankly I noticed before the report, was that the city historically has had pretty good entry-level wages, but people weren't moving away from the entry range very fast. They're kind of stuck toward the beginning. I think that the numbers, if I recall correctly, were something like 80% of our employees were within 15% of the entry salary, instead of being spread out further. And the only way you move people is by doing salary increases. So that was one of their recommended ways of doing that, was doing an increase after probationary periods for people that are promoted. And from I understand the employees that have the issue with it. From a theoretical approach, it does make some sense what they recommended, though. The people that are being promoted, if anybody should be probably picked up and tried to help from a compensation standpoint, they're probably the best we got, by nature that they've competed for those promotions and they've won that competition. Unfortunately, anytime you change anything, you can't look backwards when you do it. If you try to say we're going to start doing this July 1st, and so let's back up a year and try to help those people that just missed it. Well, when you do that, there's somebody that's a year and a month, and if you try to go back and catch them, and there's somebody else just a couple months back, and so it's really hard to go back retrospectively or retroactively and make a change. About all you can do is say, we know what we were doing maybe wasn't the best practice, so we think we've identified something better, and so on such and such a day we're going to start doing it differently. And I've talked to Wayne and some other employees about it as well, and it is, I think it's more difficult in probably police and fire, where there's a lot of the same job classifications there, and probably more promotions going on than anywhere else in city government. Probably in the other departments, they were pretty happy with the change, because it was one more little 1% for the people that were generally high performers. They were been selected for promotions, and if there's a push to do away with it, I just respectfully would like to request that before we throw it out completely, if police and fire don't like it, then we stop it for them. But if the other departments don't have a problem with it, that we leave it in for the rest of city government, because it doesn't seem to be generating any significant ill feelings anywhere else. I understand that they're a little different, and if we need to address their chain of command and their organizational structure a little differently, and certainly we can amend Chapter 37 if that's the desire of the commission, and make that change going forward.
Comment from Commissioner Waller.
If I could just remind folks that these changes went into effect along with a number of sweeping changes to these policies, and this was put into effect at the same time longevity was phased out. So it's all of that was kind of considered within the same context. So the way our longevity system work, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but folks were eligible, people received a 1% increase after the first year of employment, and then it kicked into 3 years. What was the?
I'm trying to remember before 2010 if there was a 1-year increase there, if it was just, yes, it was 1,
I believe it was 1%
6,
for 1 year.
9, 12.
Yeah. Right.
1, 6, 9, 12, and on every 3 years after that.
My point being that, I mean, this is kind of an alternative, in some ways then that this is kind of an alternative to what we were doing with longevity pay, where there was the kind of automatic bump after you reach a certain, what we would call a probationary period. And within and as we're also discussing longevity pay, I guess my preference, I realize we can't change it in retroactive, my preference going forward would be that we that we simplify everything and restore some measure of longevity and allow that restoration to replace this provision.
But remember, if I could, longevity doesn't have anything to do with promotions.
Sure.
And this section only deals with employees who are promoted. So they're similar in certain respects, but there's differentiations as well.
It almost seems to me that it would make more sense for fire, EMS, and police to kind of maybe function under a different tree.
They kind of already have the promotion policy.
Right.
Basically, these things are best we do.
You know, I really don't. I know there's some employees over there that aren't happy with the provision, and it seems like we've done a lot of promotions in the last 2 years as we've had retirement. I suspect there's some people that were pretty happy with it too when they found out they were going to get it, but I don't know what the majority of the employees feel about it. It's like most things. There's some that feel like they got the good end of the stick and some that feel like they got the sharp end, you know.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if we were to change this, that change wouldn't necessarily affect anybody we currently employ. It would be much more relevant once we haven't hired yet. Is that?
No, this is just for promotion, so I think it would affect future promotions. And we'd have to, the way we wrote the language, we would have to be careful for those people sort of in limbo right now that have been promoted, but they haven't served their probationary period yet. We'd need to make a decision about whether we're going to give that 1% since it was in effect on the date they were promoted, or if we're going to just shut it down on a date certain regardless of.
But that's what I'm saying, is this could be phased in and have less of an impact on it.
Yeah, you could grandfather, with language, you could grandfather in the people that had been promoted prior to, I mean, if we're talking about doing something like that, you're talking about, I would assume, first reading, I don't know if it'd still be done in April, or second reading in May, or first in May and second in June, so you're probably looking at July 1st. It started on July 1st. If you wanted to run it for, that was a piece that came in 2010 for those departments. If you wanted to say for promotions effective after July 1 of 2012, that wouldn't harm anybody that had already been promoted that maybe are expecting it, but it would stop it for any promotions after that date specific. But you'd word it, I think you could word it any way you wanted to.
Any other comments from commissioners?
Another question.
Tony, you want to come?
Yeah, I'll let Commissioner Wilder go ahead if he wants to finish his thoughts.
Pardon me?
I'll let Commissioner Wilder go ahead if he wants to finish his thoughts. But
I appreciate it. Thank you. I just had just one last question about and I know we don't know this number for certain, but what do you imagine the fiscal impact would be? Let's say we were to just repeal this outright, go back to the way things used to be. That would obviously save us some money, but how? Do you have any idea what kind of numbers we're talking about, even rough?
I haven't really thought about it. The cost of 1% longevity per year for 100 employees is what? And maybe 15 employees a year are being eligible for this, so it would be 1/6 or 1/7 of whatever the annual cost of 1% longevity would be. I don't know that number, but Steve might have it on the top of his head or something.
I have to look at the number, but I don't have it off the top of my head.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's a lot of money one way or the other. It's, once again, it's not a big piece of our employee base. It's just a handful of people that get promoted during the course of a given year. I'm just guessing 15 or 20 maybe across city government. But
Thank you. I guess my question is maybe more of a clarification. According to the Mercer report, you said that the problem was you had too many employees sort of hanging around that base salary or that entry-level salary. And the idea of putting a 1% or getting that bump up after that probationary period is to sort of give some separation there from that entry-level number. But when you do that, to me it appears that under the promotionary process, that if you just did it under the promotionary process, you would narrow the amount of people versus if in longevity, you would have a much broader people and be able to accomplish that a little quicker. Am I interpreting that correctly?
yeah, you're talking about a more limited group of people. It was just one piece, just like longevity can do that, just like performance pay, if we had a performance pay program could do that. If we did, there's several things authorized in the ordinance that we've just never been able to fund at this point, but there's lots of little mechanisms or tools or things that you do to move people into the pay range and kind of separate them a little bit, and this was just one of those things that they recommended. So.
And just a follow-up question on there. The longevity pay system has been in place for quite some time. I guess my question is, are either one of these really an effective mechanism? Because with that in place, the Mercer report still notes the issue there.
The reason why it hadn't been because as the city did longevity pay, it also kept moving its pay ranges. Okay. So every time we did a 3% longevity, we did a 3% adjustment to the minimum salary. So really, it's like a car running in mud. It just, you were doing salary increases, but the range was moving as fast as the salaries were moving, so you really weren't spreading out any.
Right, I see that.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Commissioner May.
Well, Mayor, I don't know, would it be appropriate if we just asked a quick question of the fire chief and the police chief, if they've had any thoughts, not put on the spot, I just would be interested to see if they had any thoughts one way or the other, and if they don't, that's okay. That would be in addition to what our HR. I'm sorry, I said Mayor, and that would just be additional information based on what our HR manager said.
Well, on its face, you would think, kind of like the Jimmy Fallon commercial, who wouldn't want more money? You know, I mean, you would think that, but I think the problem in our divisions are there are so many different promotions. There are 5 levels. And say a person that reaches a captain has promoted 3 times, those raises that are now going to the people underneath that person, they missed out on those. And I think that's where the conflict is.
Yeah, I just echo what she said. When Chapter 37 was being rewritten, we voiced concerns then that it was going to create this problem that has now manifested. So, I guess to sum it up, it creates more problems, especially from a morale standpoint, than it does boost morale. It's only boosts morale, as Randy said, for those people that are getting it. And all those other people that, I've been a sergeant for 2 years, and all of a sudden he's been doing 6 months and he's making more money than I am. So that's the problem it creates.
And we have more promotions, more promotional opportunities come up in our service than it would.
I think that's the key game when you talk about a fireman or a police officer is like 4 promotions, you know, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, and battalion chief or major in their area, so that thing can compound and become 4%. Well, it's not like that anywhere else in city government. Unfortunately, in too many areas, there's so many areas, there's no promotional job structure whatsoever. The people are hired in a job, and maybe there's one level that they can bump up to, but outside of the police and fire, there's no place else where there's 4 promotional levels for them to even attain. So it is a problem that, given their organizational structure, I think, probably puts it a little bit more on the front burner than it would be anywhere else. Because, you know, it can have that cumulative effect over the period of time. So you take, yeah.
Mr. Well, Commissioner.
Unless Commissioner has anything else. Okay.
Mr. Moore?
Well, then I really would be in favor of Commissioner Head's suggestion that we amend this policy just in the public safety realm. I understand this decision is wanting to get people to move forward as quickly as possible, but it's also more of a problem in the public safety realm than other departments to serve as a training ground. As in, I think there's something to be said in public safety for folks to have to stick around for a while before this stuff really starts kicking in. Otherwise, we just go through the expensive training process of training officers for Shelbyville or Woodford County or whoever. And also, for all the complaints we've heard about this, they've all been from within the public safety realm, I think.
Could I ask a question? How many complaints?
Dozens, I would say.
7?
Dozens. I would say.
Dozens?
Yeah. We even heard, I believe we even heard some of this at the employee forums we held a while ago. And obviously nobody speaks for one voice within the public safety department. But for example, we've got employee unions in each department, and it's not uncommon for the employee unions and for all the folks who aren't a member of the union to take very different positions on any number of issues. And this is one where, it seems that the guys, a lot of the guys across the board are unison.
Now, Commissioner Wilder, Commissioner Head, and maybe others have been more aware of this than I have. Perhaps some conversation you've had with others. I personally do not feel comfortable to sit here today and say we'd like to make the change. That's my personal opinion. It seems to me that when I was in the state government, that every once in a while something that happened was change policies. And that people that were coming in were making more than I was. So this, what I'm saying, I don't think, when I pick up the conversation, that this is not good overall in government. Did you get that? Am I speaking truth or not?
Yeah, like I said, I think there's probably some employees that have benefited from it, and there's some employees that feel slighted by it, and it's...
And if you reverse it, it's going to be the opposite?
Well,
everybody will be happy?
I don't know that everybody's ever happy. I think we've had that discussion.
But you'll create a whole new group that doesn't get that now.
Yes. That's the issue. That sometimes it seems, sometimes when we sit in the positions that we occupy, decisions have to be made, and people you make them at that time with the best information you have. And I just want to caution, because 3 votes can do anything here, but I would just caution, my personal opinion, don't move too quickly on this. It's impossible to speak to everybody.
I think one of Mercer's thoughts on this was, I can't remember who said it a while ago, but, the whole purpose of the compensation policy is to be able to recruit and retain the best. And so it's very much a trade-off on this promotional increase thing. Is this little bit of 1 or 2 or 3 or 4% may be enough to keep somebody from leaving, but if it makes other people feel slighted and it hurts morale, then it may cause other people to want to leave. So You know, it's two things that are kind of competing, you know, and but you just, it's in my opinion, I'm staggering all over the place here, but it's just a function of change. And anytime you change anything, there's people that, you know, wished you'd changed it faster or wished you hadn't have changed it at all because it's to their benefit or would have been to their benefit had you done it faster or had you not done it at all or had you put it off. So that's, you know,
Mr. Moore.
We've acknowledged that, you know, recruiting and hiring is the basis for this. What response have you had the last time we asked for applications for fire and police?
I think we had pretty good, 100.
Each service.
160.
160 applicants you tested.
Tested 109 or 110 or 122 or something and tested 70 or something in that range or whatever. So of course, the economy is probably the driver, or at least one of the drivers in that. But and interesting enough, today the city of Georgetown is doing a salary survey for police. And I responded to their request for information and asked if they'd be willing to share their data after they collected it. And their HR director had sent me an email this afternoon saying, sure, I'll be glad to share with you. I'll get with you when I get some more responses. So, you know, it's something that we do need to keep our finger on the pulse, I think, so that we can see how we stack up against these other communities around us.
I've done that. I've done it since I've been mayor. We stack up pretty good.
Of course, the entry level is not really the issue here. We're not really having trouble recruiting people at all, but this becomes a whole different issue when you get into the promotion group.
Like I say, if the majority of the commission, all we're going to do, I think, would be just, if there's 3 votes here to do it, be to stick in a clause that says, except for employees promoted within the police and fire departments, or except for employees promoted under Chapter 40, because really you're talking about the civil service people, not office staff or anybody else. We don't, you know, I mean, I don't know how many promotions we do in that area, probably a few, but you know, I think we're talking about civil service is what we're talking about. So
I don't feel comfortable trying to sit here and make I found a great person, that person. I like to lean on you. I like to lean on city manager, department heads more. I personally would like, before we make any kind of decision, I'd like to hear more from you. Give them information for myself, what y'all can do, what you like. Mr. Walker. Right, Mr.
I was just going to suggest, I think maybe the first step might be just to see how many people promotees this will affect, whether they change it or not, that have been promoted under it over the past 2 years, or even the ones that were originally promoted that if we stop it now, how many it's going to affect there, both on the police and fire side. And that'll give us kind of a baseline to look at.
and we could report back with that next week or next month. And it might give time, you know, we could survey employees for
That's
this
what I was
matter.
going to suggest. I'd like to hear what, as a whole, what they're saying, really broader, because I have 2 back calls as well about this issue.
Yeah, and it's like I say, I think there's good, you'll find people on both sides of the issue or whatever.
I would just like to ask that one of the things we really look at is, yes, we do recruit pretty well, but the retaining, you know, we've had 250 years walk out on us, and I hear from employees that once they get their 20 years, they're walking out. And I would like to see more people try to stay a little bit longer. So any way we can try to retain employees.
You think they're walking out because of salary? Or because they've got the term and they now can retire with full benefits?
Well, then they don't want to stay here because they don't feel it's been a fair system to them. But you're not going to make everybody happy, but if it's something we can look at, Mayor, I would like to have this looked at.
Sure, oh yeah, absolutely.
And examined. And maybe this is the best answer of what we have.
But I'm just saying that when people, reach retirement age, not only walk away. Whether it's 20 years or 27 years or what have you. And I don't know if people who leave or because they're so unhappy. That's not what I'm saying. I don't know if they are not. Mr. Walton.
Well, I mean, I think we all know that we can't make a decision on this. We're talking about an ordinance change, so this would require multiple public readings and ample public discussion. But in light of the fact that the department has raised these very concerns back when these changes were made, and a lot of what we're hearing from the department heads now, I think this is something we should look at. I agree with Commissioner Hedden that retention is the key here. I think our recruitment's fine. And I'm not even particularly concerned about retirement so much as transfer. I mean, I think that's the retention we need to be focused on. And a lot of that does have to do with whether or not folks feel they're being treated fairly and consistently. I think lots of folks do feel, fairly or unfairly, lots of folks do feel that this is unfair. And I know it was, you know, I know this was put together with very good intentions, but I would also like to see this data on what kind of numbers we're talking about.
We'll pull together some numbers on how many people it's affected in the last 2 years and how many people are kind of in between right now that have been promoted but not yet received it. And,
Or if you guys have any ideas what you think would be regular departments? You want to ask?
We said it's better to come back and give you some company there. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
The next item for this,
We still have longevity, the second piece of that discussion. I mean, I just think folks have had enough time to absorb the longevity numbers we have. There are a lot of options on the table. It seems to be a pretty general agreement in some form or fashion. Restore longevity or keep it from phasing out. I've got my thoughts on this, but they're not going to share theirs.
Well, if I may, one of the things that I've kind of been in support of since coming on the board is in some way trying to restore longevity pay as best as we possibly can. Granted, you know, these are not easy budget times by any means, and doing so will be very difficult. Which sort of leads me to prefer out of the options that Mr. Dawson kind enough to present to us, the 5-year 1% plan, which I think would have an annual cost of $53,000. Is that right? That's on there. I think that from a longevity standpoint, that's a way that we can keep our costs minimal, but still in some way reward those employees who are stuck around and committed to the city of Frankfort and ways to retain them. So that's sort of my preference in looking forward on this. I think that you start getting to the every 3 year and you do a 3% or something like that, you can start getting pretty doggone costly pretty doggone quick. So, but we still want to, in some way, try to reward those employees who are stuck around.
Okay, Mr. May.
I just want to ask if the...
please. You're far down.
I know, I'm far down, I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask if our city manager had a recommendation based on the information that's been provided. You've had a chance to...
Well, I've been working on the budget for next year, and our budget looks so bad that quite honestly, personally could not endorse anything for the commission to pass that would add additional costs, especially reoccurring costs. And we're going to talk about our budget in depth with another time, but our budget for this year, if you'll remember, if you can go back to last year, we said we had a difficult budget, and that this year, which was the time I did not know I would be here, however, I did forecast a train wreck. And I have informed the commission all year long of our budget status. And Our first budget projection for this year was 2.7 million shortfall. We've met with department heads. We've asked them to defer purchases. We've completely blocked out things that were asked for, and we've gotten that down to 2.2 million deficit. Then we went back again and met with various department heads, and we've got that down to a 1.759 deficit for the coming year. So I cannot in good conscience endorse anything that would add more to our budget before we can very factually say where the funding and revenues are coming from for next year. And right now, the revenues look to be continued flat, on a flat basis. So it's very difficult for me to talk about anything that would be additional money.
I'm sorry, I'm not just asking another question. Does anybody, either you, city manager, or finance director, or any department heads, think if you factored in the cost of a 1% every 5 years, how that could plug in to this one? Did you look at that, or just, and this is so bad that at this point you haven't had a chance to really work that into the figures to see what that would look like?
It's not plugged in right now, of course, you know, you can see. I'm sorry. Right now, we haven't factored any COLAs or any longevity into the system right now. But you know, I've broken it down as Michael, Commissioner Turner has mentioned that, you know, in the general fund, it's about almost $37,000 a year impact for 1% spread over 5 years. But I will say this: these numbers here don't. The one issue that we're dealing with every year is this continual increase in the pension cost. And I didn't factor those numbers, those increase in pension costs. I used the current pension costs in these numbers right here, the ones that I.
What is the pension, the cost this year for hazardous and non-hazardous?
We're spending about approximately $4.5 million a year for hazardous and non-hazardous pension costs right now.
What is the percentage now?
I think hazardous is approximately 37%, and I think that non-hazardous is about 19%. But you know, we're on a 10-year increase in order to get the funding. I think the goal is to get it to the 5% level. And over the next 10 years, we're going to have about a $200,000 to $300,000 increase for the city each year to get the funding levels up, increase each year. So, as I said, those percentages are going to go up. I don't have those calculated in these numbers at this point. I think it's been about a month since I calculated this number, but I'm almost sure that I did not include those percentage increases in there. And of course, those percentages, they're adjusted based on investments. Investment returns and things like that. They adjust those percentages every October. So we don't know, you know, sometimes, you know, performance is really good, so we'll experience one flat year. We might go, you know, next year they could come back in October and say, well, we're not going to increase it this year. You know, and they don't increase it, and then, you know, we'll bump it to the previous year. But we just don't know. We've got a roadmap, but it's not perfect with those numbers.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. Okay, Commissioner, you finished?
Thanks.
Mr. Wilder.
We obviously haven't, I mean, we've heard the kind of general budget estimates for the next budget year. We haven't had a chance, you know, as a commission yet to actually see what's making up all of those numbers in terms of agency requests and all of that.
Sure.
You know, I'm interested in this budget balance, or as close to balance as we can get as anybody. And I'm certainly prepared to make any number of hard decisions in order to help make that happen. But I do think, I mean, in terms of the options here, I would still favor essentially keeping things the way they are, which is a 1% longevity pay on a 3-year cycle, which amounts to a $55,000 annual impact for us. And I think if we're discussing all these retention problems right now, and the cost of training new recruits and new hires, et cetera. I just think that's a relatively small price to pay to hold on to folks. And I'm just concerned that if we further degrade the package we're offering employees, that we'll only see those problems increase. And at the very end, and I think one of the reasons for low morale right now is that people see this going away. The previous commission obviously voted to have this phase out here at the end of this fiscal year. So I would prefer to see essentially just that we keep what we currently have in place. That's not a matter of restoring the 3%, but it is just a guarantee that if folks stick around, they'll at least get something. They'll at least get a 1/3% raise annually on average. The concern I have even with going to the 1% in the 5-year cycle is that still knocks people even further down from where they are right now. The difference between, every little penny counts. The difference between 55 annual impact and 37 annual impact is worth that difference. So, and I am looking forward to getting into the meat of the budget, but that's when I'm ready for that discussion.
Any other comments? Mr. Donahue.
Just one comment on the discussion. While there's ways to automate, and sometimes I wonder if we can do it, but I know it can be done, given we've got a pretty old payroll system that we're using. But the transition from a 3-year to 5-year kind of worries me a little bit, in that, say somebody just got their 9-year, and if you went to 5, 10, 15, 20, that person's going to get another raise maybe within a year, when somebody else that say they just got their 6, they're going to be 4 years before they're going to be eligible. Over 15 years, everybody gets to go through the cycle 3 times, so it kind of works out. But there is that transition, and I suspect, although I wasn't here, the transition from 5 to 3 was a headache, but it probably wasn't as bad because employees were getting more than they were used to instead of getting less. But the transition from 3 to 5 would rub the other way. They'd be getting less instead of more, and the people that had to wait 4 years versus maybe the person next to them that got one after they just got one a year ago. And I'm not saying it can't be done. I'm just saying it's a concern of mine just from an administrative standpoint. And from my perspective, my recommendation for what it's worth is if you can stay with your 3-year pattern, but adjust the amount of your commitment, so that you don't have to worry about that employee versus employee thing of how come I've got to wait 4 years and that person just got one and now they're, it's just a transition thing of going from 3-year cycles to 5-year cycles.
Is there anything to say about someone who starts after, say today, that they have a 5-year versus a 3-year? So that people who start now have a different starting point?
You can do that.
I know it makes it a little bit more confusing in the departments, but if you're thinking about longevity, in 20 years they may all be on the same page.
We sort of have that now, where the retirement system changed in 2008 and it's changed again since. So we have different employees that have, some have to work longer than others to get full retirement benefits.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it kind of goes back to just the analogy we were making a few minutes ago. things change, and you have to do your best to adapt to them when they do. So, but like I said, it's just from my standpoint, if you were trying to stick with 1% but spread out to 5 or cut it to 0.6 and leave it at 3, from an administrative standpoint, and maybe not pitting employee versus employee, it might be easier to swallow if you didn't change the schedule, you just changed the dollars. But like we talked about before, when you make that commitment, you need to make it for a full cycle. Right. If you're on a 3-year cycle, to the best of your ability, you can never speak to what the next commission's going to do, but you can at least be on the record as we want to do this for the next 3 years. And if you got on a 5-year cycle, you'd want to say, this is something that we want to do for 5 years, so that everybody goes through the cycle one time and has a chance to catch up with everybody else in the cycle. Does that make sense? Or?
I know this is kind of a simplification, but the longevity pay technically isn't even getting phased out at the end of the year. It's just transitioning into something that isn't guaranteed, and it's also not flat across the board. That varies depending on performance and evaluation. So their simplification.
Well, really, what the longevity in 2009, the commission voted to change it from 3% every 3rd year to 1% every 3rd year for 3 years, which was one cycle. And that cycle ends June 30th of 2012. And beginning on July 1 of 2012, longevity is still there, but the percentage of pay increase is to be set by the commission through the budgetary process. So it doesn't go away, it just, it being spelled out exactly what it is goes away, if you will.
And but am I correct in understanding that that percent actually could vary a bit from employee to employee? Or maybe that was just something that was discussed 3 years ago.
Yeah, no, under that longevity, it's the same for everybody, except that there are still the provisions in there that employees that have had certain amounts of disciplinary actions, either their department head has to make the case for them to get that longevity increase, or if they meet another threshold, they're not eligible for that increase. But it's not a portion of it, it's either a yes or no thing.
And that's not a change from the way we currently do things?
That's been there since 2010.
Okay, so that is, but right, I'm still stuck in 2009. So that is a change from the way we...
In 2010, when it came in, it was new.
Right.
But it's still there going forward. It doesn't sunset or change.
See, that's the catch, is we can, I mean, we're going to have to make some decision going into the next cycle as to whether or not we can allocate anything for longevity. You know, we'll decide whether or not it's going to be 0 or 0.5% or 1% or 12% or whatever. But I think the catch with there's no guarantee that it will be anything at all. And I think that's the purpose of longevity pay, is it offers employees some guarantee that everything else aside, COLAs aside, everything else can go out the window. There's at least some guarantee that if you stay with us, that you can rise up, even just a little bit. And we're not talking about a lot right here. 1% every 3 years is pretty meager, but it's still a guarantee. And I think that's the whole point of longevity pay. And that's the concern I have with what we're transitioning into, is that there's no guarantee.
And could I ask you a question?
Yeah.
The B4 simply, the criteria being simply because you're employed. No other consideration as to job performance, except if you stay, you get some type of ranking.
Yes, up to 2 reprimands, a department head can make the case, and the city manager can still authorize a longevity increase. More than 2 written reprimands or a suspension, the employee is not eligible.
And that's within
2 years, or within 3 years, I'm sorry. I don't have 37 in front of me, so.
And I'm comfortable with that. That's fair enough, right?
I believe it is 3 years. Add 2 years from the civil service process. We're allowing 2 years of disciplinary actions or 2 years of attaboys to go into that process, which is later on the agenda, but it is 3 years in the longevity.
So, I mean, so in that sense, the new form of longevity pay, I mean, does take, at least on some level, performance into account, which I think is only fair. I mean, it's just binary, it's thumbs up or thumbs down, but that's. But I mean, my point is that absent the debate over whether or not we can include, whether or not our next longevity cycle should be X or Y, I mean, I would really prefer that we amend the ordinance to include some base minimum. I mean, I would prefer that minimum to be 1%, but even if it's lower than that, I mean, just so that there's at least some guarantee. I think I've said my piece.
What else? Mr. Bourne, do you have any interest on this issue?
No, not on this issue.
I think Commissioner Wilder was saying he'd like to see an ordinance that way. Are you suggesting that particular time?
Well, I mean, if we're going to address this, it would have to be within the next.
But we work on the budget now. You want to wait to see how we work on the budget before you do this?
I think this needs to be, I mean, whether or not we do this, I think it needs to be discussed within the context of the budget.
I think so.
Thank you. The next item is some additional information that the solicitor has gotten and a letter that he has presented on the use of, outdoor use of mothballs.
And I was just going to move up here because the chief and I are going to talk about the fireworks ordinance, so I'm ready. I did do some additional research and made some additional contacts after our last discussion about the use of snake away and also the use of mothballs. And in discussing this issue with Dale Anderson with the Department of Agriculture, Dale did point out the statute KRS 217B.270, which actually indicates that the city cannot adopt an ordinance that regulates the use or sale of pesticides. And the reason for that is because the state, in its wisdom, wants to have pesticides regulated similarly throughout the counties and throughout the cities. So in terms of regulating the use of snake away and mothballs, the city really can't pass any ordinance to do so. And the entity that has the authority to ensure that it's being used properly is the Department of Agriculture. So my recommendation, in addition to talking with Dale Anderson over at the Department of Agriculture, I also went upstairs and talked to Iris Skidmore, and Iris represented the owners. Of course, they're the folks that were concerned about this, and Iris is a very sharp lawyer. So I said, well, Iris, I want you to take a look at this to see what you think, see if I've missed something. And, you know, unfortunately, at least for the owners and for the city's ability to regulate the use and sale of pesticides, she said that she was not aware of any other provisions that would be helpful or change my interpretation. So my recommendation at this point is that if we do get a complaint by anyone indicating that mothballs are being used in a way other than is set forth in the directions on the product, you know, if you put them outside, that's an illegal use of mothballs. And it's the same thing if you use the snake away product in an illegal manner. Then the best thing that we can do, I think, to help our citizens is to recommend that they contact the Department of Agriculture. And if those people are not getting cooperation from the Department of Agriculture, then for the city to, you know, help them in their contacts with their department, with the Department of Agriculture.
just so that they realize that, it is an important issue, and it's unfortunate when you have people living in the neighborhood that won't comply with the requirements of the use of pesticides, but there is a way to address it, and the Department of Agriculture is the way to do it. So,
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of questions for clarification. So it sounds like you're saying we could even adopt a local ordinance that mirrors the state law.
no. It says, the statute says, no city shall adopt or continue in effect any ordinance, resolution, rule, regulation regarding pesticide sale or use. It's pretty broad. I mean, we could pass something and see if it's going to be challenged in court, but I don't think that we would be successful.
Well, thank you for doing all this homework for me. Continue on.
It was an interesting process.
Yes,
Y'all ready to talk about fireworks?
How?
Chief, please come forward.
The chief and I had worked to develop a fireworks ordinance, and have you all seen it yet? Because it was sent over to Ramona, and it should be in your package, but just to go through it briefly, this ordinance...
If you did get one, excuse me, previously, disregard that one. This one was just tweaked today.
Some minor changes. But anyway, our understanding was that you all wanted to at least consider having fireworks be used in the manner they were used, let's say back in 2009, instead of last year when basically you could use a lot of different fireworks types that you had not been able to previously. And I'm just going to go through this real quickly and then let you all ask questions if you have them. The first section, Section 1, contains definitions of fireworks, and those definitions basically come out of the state statute. And you may want to circle 3A, and B, which are audible ground devices. And you may want to circle D, E, and F, which are smoke devices, snakes, glowworms, trick noise makers.
Of all.
Yeah. And you may want to circle wire sparklers. Because the way this ordinance works is those are the type of fireworks that people would be allowed to use under this ordinance. And what those fireworks basically are, and I'll go over that again, is 3A and B on page 3, and it's D, E, and F on page 4, and G on page 4. And what those basically are what's called consumer fireworks. Okay. That's why the definitions are important, so you all know what could be used. Section 2 concerns display fireworks, and display fireworks are the type of fireworks that the city shoots off, or maybe the VFW shoots off, or you see at Thunder over Louisville. And under this ordinance, no one could sell or use display fireworks unless you're the city or a VSW, someone like that who has been authorized and has the proper licensing to shoot off that kind of heavy fireworks. Section 3 concerns the use of fireworks. It basically outlaws the use and sale of displays of fireworks in the city, with certain exceptions. Pyrotechnic devices authorized for use under the supervision of a military organization. Those exceptions are basically if you're the city or the VFW, someone that's licensed and has sufficient knowledge or use or training, etc. Section 4 concerns the sale
of consumer fireworks, and again, those are the ones that I pointed out to you. And Section 4 allows the sale of consumer fireworks by someone 18 years or older. So you have to be at least 18 years old to be employed to sell consumer fireworks. And consumer fireworks in the city could be sold at both a permanent facility, or it could be sold at a seasonal facility. So, you know, we would still see the tents or the trailers that sell consumer fireworks in the different parking lots in the city, etc. If you sell a seasonal firework, though, you do have to get a $250 permit per location. And if you sell permanent firework or fireworks from a permanent location throughout the year, you'd have to get a $1,000 permit. Okay. And so again, temporary structures would be allowed if you get a seasonal fireworks permit. There is, under Section 6, inspection and enforcement, and the inspection and enforcement of the use of fireworks would be done jointly by the fire department and by the police department. Section 7 concerns penalties, and the penalties would be, if you violate the ordinance, then a penalty of $50 up to a penalty of $500 plus confiscation of the illegal fireworks. So if you were selling even consumer fireworks in the city and didn't have a permit, then those fireworks, you'd be cited and you have to pay a fine, and then the fireworks would be confiscated. And then Section 8 basically says that, you know, any ordinance that's in conflict with this ordinance will be repealed. So what this ordinance does, again, is it basically takes us back to the situation as it existed prior to the change in the Kentucky Revised Statutes. I meant to point out one other thing, and that's under Section 5.3. That talks about when consumer fireworks could be used. You could generally use them on any day between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. But if you're on December the 31st, you could fire them off until 1 a.m. on January the 1st, just to welcome the new year in. And then on July the 3rd and July the 4th and Memorial Day, you can fire them off until midnight. And then if the City Commission wants to, you know, have a special celebration under Section 5, Paragraph 4, say that on the day of birth of the City of Frankfort, if we want a big celebration, then we can do that as well. So that's what this does. We did provide a copy of this to Rick Sparks, the county attorney. I have not heard any comments back from him yet, and then the chief provided a copy to Chief Watts, just because, you know, fireworks is, I guess we thought it was kind of like rainfall. It doesn't make sense for us to have one ordinance in the city that says you can or can't do this, and then, you know, in the house that's on the county line, they're on the other side, and they're, you know, throwing up display fireworks to midnight every day of the year. So we have provided to the county, but have not yet heard back comments, unless you've heard something.
The only comments is I was talking to Sheriff Mellon. Sheriff Mellon and Chief Watts are on board and favor doing the same thing in the county, but again, it's up to the county attorney.
I might have overlooked it, you know, I'm just trying to read over pretty quick, but is there anything about a distance of where you can light off into where another building can be?
We did not include it in this ordinance. In the state statute, it's a 200-foot minimum requirement, but that is specifically regarding the bigger stuff that we're now outlawing.
Just think that these ones are so small, we don't need anything.
That's my opinion, yes. If they're doing the glowworms, the sparklers, if they want to do it in their driveway, their front yard, I don't see an issue with it. But big stuff would, which would our outline, at that minimum requirement of 200 feet.
And then my other question would be if someone came in from out of town, maybe a circus or something out of town, and they wanted to put on a fireworks show at the end of their show, could they file for a permit?
Yes, they would have to do that through the state, under the display
Okay,
section of
under
the
the
ordinance,
state.
which requires a separate permitting process and approval by the local fire chief. So that's covered under KRS.
Okay, great. Good. Glad to have this. I live next door to my brother who shoots off fireworks all the time and drives me crazy at 10 o'clock at night. And I hear my kids saying that, you know, Uncle John shoot off fireworks again, but, you know, we're downtown in the middle of a neighborhood of lots of sleeping children here, so. Thank you.
Commissioner, Commissioner Bailey.
Just have a quick question. This is just under section 7 of penalties. In sub 4, it talks about the after appropriate hearing is held and violation is found just because confiscated fireworks shall be destroyed by an appropriate enforcement authority. This is tweaking. Do we need to specify the manner in which those are destroyed? Do they need to be incinerated? Could they have the powder taken out and disposed of properly in proper containers? Blah, blah, blah. And should there be a time that they shall be destroyed within a certain period? Or could they be taken out to fire range and just burned?
How do you destroy them?
Well, in the past, when we have had the opportunity to confiscate fireworks, they've been turned over to the state fire marshal's office, and it's up to them to destroy them as appropriate.
Do you have to just tweak that out, or just?
We could certainly add, if the chief would check with the fire marshal and see if we can just turn it over to them. I mean, that's probably the best way to do it, because then we don't have to worry about it. We just say they'd be turned over to the state fire marshal within 30 days of confiscation or whatever.
The reason I was asking, I think Katie's brother called us, that he would take those, or just have those destroyed, he would drive them to the place. He's a volunteer.
Just lighting them out.
I don't know if we had discussion, but I know it's serious, but seriously though, do we need to tweak just that one little section?
Sure.
So that they don't need to stay around forever and somebody says, well, you've got these fireworks that you confiscated, you haven't done anything with them yet. And that's going to be because, who knows what the reason would be.
And of course, the county may have some tweaks that they'd like to make, and after you all look at this a little more closely, obviously this is our first shot, so.
Just one more question.
You pretty much answered all my questions already, but just to clarify, I mean, are there any substantive differences between this and the way things used to be?
No. The only differences are specifically regarding Frankfort charging permitting fees, which we never did before. But the definitions of the consumer fireworks are all exactly the same. It's a stated thing from the United States Product Safety Commission. So those definitions are identical as they were before, and there are no substantive changes prior to what we had in law prior to March of 2011.
We've tried to make it as consistent as possible. I'm not going to say it is identical, but for example, you know, the $50 per day for a violation up to 500, you know, we tweaked that. Just, I don't know that the person who violated it the first time would be cited for $500, but, you know.
In terms of what people can buy and sell.
Yeah. It's very consistent with what was previously done.
And previously there were no time constraints on it, so we've added that as most of the other localities that have adopted ordinances that specify time that they're allowed.
We got such a torrent of complaints last summer for folks, especially elderly folks who wanted to go to bed before 10 o'clock.
Actually, I've got those stats. In 2010, we had a total of 38 complaints. After the new law went into effect last year during the July 4th season, we had 243.
Sure. To reiterate, I do think that no matter what we do, it doesn't need to be essentially the same as the county, because it isn't house on the county line that's the concern so much as the parking lot that could vend the fireworks would otherwise be banned in the city, because we all know that enforcing this is incredibly difficult once the fireworks are on the streets. So that, I mean, this kind of needs to be addressed at the root, which is the availability. And if we don't have the same standards for availability in the city and county, it's just not gonna work.
And my interest in adopting such an ordinance, in addition to the noise factor, was more so regarding the potential for injuries. Because nationwide, there are about 10,000 firework injuries every year. Everything from burns, sores, and eyes on limbs. In 2008, there were 5 fireworks deaths in the United States. I'm glad to see that we're trying to limit the more dangerous stuff.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Let's see, might as well stay up here. And Chief Boyd, if you want to come forward and get the roundup success back here. We'll have a discussion of the revision of Chapter 40. And Randy, did you want to lead off? Or?
Sure. Do you have any hard copies of this available? I got a digital copy.
I've got this one if you want to use it. I can print some and bring them back in here and drop them off for you all. I didn't bring a bunch of printers.
Just for the sake of this.
Do you need it for the discussion? Yes. Just briefly or whatever, we sent this out along with a little summary of the changes, and a lot of input, a lot of time spent with the two chiefs tweaking language, trying to strike a balance between making sure they had the tools they needed to manage their department and making sure that the employee rights were respected, and making sure that the Civil Service Board played enough of a role to maintain that we have a civil service system. And I hope we've struck a pretty good balance. I'm sure there's words that could be tweaked one way or another. We did present to the Civil Service Board last Tuesday? Early last week, and 4 members were there, and after probably an hour of discussion, they voted unanimously to endorse the proposal. I know Chief, they've sent it out to their employees or distributed copies, and I don't believe there's been a lot of input back the last few days. So I think I'm hoping we've struck a balance that's in the middle.
Good.
That was obviously the goal, was to find some middle ground that improved the process for these folks so that they felt like they had the tools they need to onboard new people, to make sure that the best of their departments got promoted when promotional opportunities came up. And we'll be glad to answer any questions anybody's got.
Just got a couple questions. My first question has to do with the Rule of 3 that we come up with. What sort of response did you get from employees when you were discussing that particular issue with them?
I had all positive comments except one negative, saying, well, you'll pick the guy you like and skip me. But that's not the case, especially when we got right under this. The Rule of 3 has actually always been in there, but we've never used it. And speaking personally, I would not use it unless I had an overbearing reason to skip the person that was number 1 on the list. I.e., created problems, got suspended or whatever after they got on the list. But Rule 3 has always been in there. It's just, I don't think Chief Woodley's ever used it.
No.
And I haven't, because we've always felt like it had to be very defensive to skip someone who was next on the list. But it does remain here now.
I think the concern, one of the concerns that we talked about was, that list is good for a year, and if 30 days after that list was created, if the person at the top of the list just kind of lost their way for a while, you've got to have the mechanism to go, wait a minute, this person's, something's going on, they're not ready here. But I do think the chiefs would only invoke that rule in some pretty significant circumstances. They both displayed the discipline that the list it's as objective, pretty much as objective as you can make a process like this to create a list of people from top to bottom. And it takes a lot of things into consideration, especially on the promotional side. You know, their longevity goes into play, their job performance or their performance assessment things go into play. And but it's a tool that's needed, just in case you get into that situation. You don't want to be painted into a corner where you have to promote somebody that you know is going to fail.
And the way we worded this is it says choose with the approval of the city manager will choose the candidate for this representative to the board of promotion.
I guess.
Any other
Just
comment?
a couple, Mayor, if you would go over for a second. The other, I guess, concern that I have is, and this may have been taken out, I don't know, but is the making of the policy and procedures as ordinance. I mean, we've discussed that previously. Are the policies and procedures within the fire and police department, are they ordinance now, or are they internal policy and procedures? And if you were to make them enforceable as an ordinance, to me, that would seem that it would make it, that's another or more significant hurdle to eventually change any policy or procedure down the road, should you need to do that.
If I can answer that, it is specifically for the police department, because that's an accreditation standard from the state chief's accreditation. And probably, I'm not sure how CALIA is the national accreditation, but it's just giving your rules the rules of law to it. If I tell someone you're not supposed to fire warning shots, they go, all right, they violated the improper use of handguns, they violated city ordinance because they're conduct unbecoming, that sort of thing. Specifically, I don't know why it needs to be an ordinance to be adopted as code.
Is that the case for the fire department?
We specifically did not include that they are adopted by ordinance, because we see, just as you said, there's too many problems, there are frequent changes. I was just looking for, we do have a reference in here.
Yeah, in 4004, under duties of the chiefs, we added language to clarify that the chiefs shall have the power and authority to issue, and the new language there is, and enforce the policies, procedures. So,
and for us,
even if
that's
also
another accreditation.
Exactly. So even though they're not codified as part of an ordinance, the chief does have the ability to create and enforce. And that's really, from a practical standpoint, that, Rob, I think, had voiced some concerns about codifying them as part of the ordinance, and some of the same concerns that I think you raised, Commissioner. But so instead of going that angle, we took the approach, well, what are we trying to accomplish here? And can we just do it by adding a few words, and we feel like we did, without codifying the fire department's SOPs, and not harming what was already in existence for the police department, because we know we're working on their accreditation standards. So.
Well, that satisfies my question. Thank you.
I did have one point on your question of Rule of 3 and the possibility. Even though it's in there, some of the safeguards that we put in about people who are able to compete for promotions, those who haven't had disciplinary actions in a certain amount of time, that further cleans up the field where the Rule of 3 would probably not be that necessary to invoke.
So that's the criteria.
Right. Where before, just anybody who had the seat time to take the test, and they could end up being a supervisor because they scored the highest on the test.
And we did add a candidate who has been passed over under that Rule of 3 shall be provided written notice, which includes reasons that the selection was made while he passed over.
Absolutely. When we finish this discussion, I'll run 5 copies, or you've got one, I'll run 4 copies for you all, and bring them back in and give them to Ramona, and she can distribute them at the end of the meeting if I'm not here at the end of the meeting.
I don't think I can discussion before I get that deep into it. I'll say this, with any piece of legislation this complicated, there's always going to be a number of folks who feel that they never think it can be better, but my sense is that folks on both the top and bottom of the food chain around here can probably agree that across the board, this represents an improvement over what we had.
I think the Civil Service Board thought the same thing, that they felt like it was, and one of the big goals was to make it easy to read, so that somebody that doesn't deal with it on a regular basis, we think we organized it in such a way that somebody that doesn't deal with it can look at it and figure out what the process is without, you know, it was just kind of, over the years it had been amended enough times that you had to jump around, and we kind of laid it out in a process or a chronological type of organization so that you kind of can walk through the process from front to back. And you talk about the application process, you talk about the eligibility list and the testing and all that, and then you talk about the appointment process in that order so that you can kind of look at it. So I've got a sense that all the members of the Civil Service Board felt like it accomplished just what Commissioner Roberts said there. It was a better product and something that we can move forward with.
When all the crew meetings, I had many hours. I can't say we had 100% consensus on everything, but 98 to 99%, just about on every significant change. And then I sent it out to everyone 2 weeks ago and said, please contact me by email with any questions, clarifications, whatever, by email, so I can send it back out to everybody so everybody gets the same answer. I've not had one response, and I've had the opportunity to meet with 2 crews personally, not crews, two station ship, and everybody so far said they're happy with it.
Thank you for that, Chief.
Yes.
Really, thank you.
Appreciate that. Thanks everyone for our work on this. I think it's something that's good for our city and our departments and our public safety workers, and sincerely appreciate it.
I think it's been a good ordinance.
One thing that I do want to ask, and it's not on the agenda at this point, but I assume we're ready to add it for April for first reading after discussion tonight. And if so, if there's not an objection, I'll talk to Ramona tomorrow about getting, I think we've got a draft and everything that we need, so we'll go ahead and get it on the agenda for first reading at the end of the month.
And once it's on the agenda for first reading, anybody who wants to look through the nuts and bolts and
Absolutely. Did anybody need a written copy or whatever?
I didn't even get the, I never got an email or anything, I guess. Sometimes they go out in the town prison.
Okay.
So,
It's probably too big to file.
It is, it's like a 40-page, just the ordinance piece of it. So I'll print you out. I'll print you out a set.
I have an electronic copy.
You've got an electronic bill, do you need one or no?
I've got an electronic copy, and I can print it out.
Okay.
This one's extra.
Thank you.
There's the survey. There's the summary document. Thank you all.
Thank you all.
One more whole business. And my question is just what are we waiting for with the website to get that up? It's not on the list, it's just under old business. I'm just bringing it up under old business.
Okay, whatever you want to do.
I'm just trying to.
Wilson, can you come up, please? Did you hear the question?
Yeah. The current website is being worked by Mr. Walt, Mr. Arlene. We have the initial website that Charlotte had built was just in a temporary server, and we have converted our mobile server, the one that we used before, into a Linux server. And apparently Linux server is very complicated for Charlene to work on. So Mr. Walt Baldwin, right? Is actually the one that configured it. And right now they are I guess, installing the modules for the server. And I think Charlene needs to move the files from the temporary server that is set up to the new server, which is more powerful and I guess more configured for deployment. And then once it is moved there, then I can move it. I can deploy it anytime. But when you look at the website that's developed, it seems like there's still some work to be done, especially on the homepage, like the graphics. I'm not sure if you have a look at it, but I can put it online anytime. I think she's probably waiting for everybody to say, my page is ready.
Well, thank you, appreciate it.
I don't know what else needs to be done.
Can we create some sort of deadline here to getting it out? Because I just feel like it's sort of just dragging along here, and it's not. I mean, we saw the website and I felt like we were having progress, and that's been quite some time. So I think we need to establish some sort of firm deadline here as to when we're going to be able to launch this and get it out on the web.
Just tell me what the deadline is, and we'll work on it.
A month ago would be great, but
well, she told me that it should be done by November 1st, but we just keep dragging on. I made a suggestion that we should just outsource it, because it looks like it's getting more complicated for her to work on. I mean, just give me some ideas, what should we do, and I'll work on it.
I've got a couple of technical questions about me asking. I don't get too deep on this. But you're saying we've already switched servers.
I have the server set up.
Yeah. Switching servers.
I think they have not completely moved the files from the temporary server to the new one.
Is the new one a new server, or is it a repurposed?
It's a refurbished server. It used to be the Novell server. The city, this is the original server that we have when I came. And it's still, I think, although Mr. Baldwin said that it's still, it's still reliable because it's a RAID 5, and we have some hard drives to replace for it. Well, the key actually is if Charlene knows how to work around with servers, I can purchase a completely new, brand new server, and we'll just move it. So basically, the point is, it's not necessarily the server, but the know-how on how the website is going to be.
Well, my question is about the server. This is the server that we're moving it to is the original server. It is pretty old.
32-bit, but I think it's still, when I look at it,
it's a pretty big server.
Pretty big server, yeah.
And I don't know that not all servers are, I mean, okay, I don't want to get too deep into this, but not all servers are created equal. And my understanding is that the server we're talking about here is really a tractor. It's big, it can carry it can pull a whole lot, it can carry a whole lot of weight. But the catch is that the city's website doesn't actually weigh that much. I mean, I'm not speaking in terms of an analogy here. These large servers put off a ridiculous amount of heat. I mean, just the HVAC costs associated with these old servers are pretty heavy. And plus, I'm sure it's reliable for now. If you get into any kind of tech that old, I mean, it's obviously destined to fail at some point. I mean, I think a lot of folks would tell you that a new, smaller but faster server would not only be more appropriate for what we've got, for the type of data we're carrying. We're not carrying a whole lot. We're carrying a little bit. We want people to get it quickly. So the equivalent of like a little fast car as opposed to a tractor, and that would, I mean, pay for itself probably 6 months or less than a year, just in terms of HVAC costs, just in terms of all the heat these things put out.
Are you suggesting we need to get a new one?
I'm asking if we do. I mean, that doesn't need to be. If the server itself is part of the hang-up, I'm just asking, are these concerns separate? Or does it, I mean, if we're going to need a new server at some point, because this one's going to die, and if we're having to hang up with the old server, does it make sense to just do all this at once, or do we need to?
I think the server is still fairly reliable, because most servers, it depends on the hard drive. Most of the servers depends on how the hard drive works. And I think this one, because it's a RAID 5, even if 2 hard drives will fail, all you have to do is just replace it. So the reason why I decided to maybe utilize this, because we could auction this one or use it, but I feel like it's still, because there's only one website in it, I think it still probably will work for about another year until, you know, if the hard drives started to keep failing, then maybe it's time to replace it. But at this point, I think it's still fairly reliable with one website.
This is one of the things, and this is something that if we really want to, you know, an energy expert to look at. But I think this is something that assuming we hire a sustainability coordinator, that they should take a look at, because there might be cost savings within a 6-month time frame here. There could be. I mean, lots of, you know, that's one of the big energy costs are large servers, and you know, a new server costs money, but it reduces your heating, your cooling expenses so much, and you have to cool these things so they burn up and die. You know, the energy costs of a new server might actually pay for the cost of the server in just a few months. But that's not for me to say that. I mean, somebody needs to look at the actual energy data on that. But then we mark that as a well, I guess a professional coordinator is going to look at it. But if you say it can last for a year, then
I think it will last for a year. But in terms of deadline, just tell me the date you want to employ them, and I'll try and work with it.
I don't care how
because
it looks fine.
There was really no deadline set for her to finish it. That's why it's keep, you know, dragging it and see how far it can go along with it. But when it comes to the quality of the website itself, have you all looked at it? Like, how's the front page, the home page?
I think the header's too big.
Too big?
Too simple, right? Doable to like launch it.
I thought we were going to go live with it, knowing that we needed to be tweaked. And so I thought we were going to have it for the very purpose of tweaking it, for the very purpose of changing it.
So I'll just go ahead and deploy it, put it online, and then
I thought that was the understanding. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah. Maybe I was wrong.
And go ahead and deploy it, and just go ahead and replace the LMS to www.frankfort.ky.gov.
So I'll switch it. So once the files are moved to the new server, I'll just go ahead and put it online and replace the current one.
Because even though it will need work, I think it already is a vast improvement over what we've got in terms of giving the public access to relevant information. I think this will be a big step forward in terms of communicating with the public and in terms of them being able to access city government.
1 to 2 clicks versus
Sure.
6 to 8. So.
And it will, you know, it will never, it's always a work in progress.
Right.
It'll never be perfect.
We're still amending
the
Constitution.
I think we keep waiting for it to be perfect. You know, and of course you know much more about technology than I, but it seems like the methodology that we put in place has made our department think that unless it's perfect, we're not going to accept it. And that, I don't think that's what I'm hearing from the commission, is that, you know, the Drupal, one of the big advantages of Drupal is being able to change it. And so I think there's a consensus just to, you know, as soon as reasonably possible to go live with it, and then we'll take comments and suggestions on how to change it.
Yeah, I'll talk to her tomorrow, and then asked her how fast he can move the files to the new server. I call it new server, but actually, because it's almost like refurbished, but it's new. And then I'll ask her to give us the date, the actual date. Moving probably and configuring it probably might take a couple of days, you know. And then maybe next week we'll put it in line.
Great. Thank you.
I got a feasible business as well. And I guess I'll just bring this up to start this conversation relating to garbage collection, to the paper program. We heard a concern from the director of the housing authority about, okay, so you know how we changed the ordinance so that we no longer pick up from units of 8 or more for a number of good reasons. But one entity that's been particularly impacted by that has been the housing authority. And I think specifically the area on Walter Todd is the area we're not picking up anymore. Is that correct? Correct. And so they're having to, hire out a private contractor to carry that, and it's adding about $15,000 to their bottom line. Because obviously the difference between the city service and a private service is vastly different. And I've been, I think we need to treat everybody fair across the board, and I understand we should make exceptions, for different groups of people. But I've been brainstorming how we could possibly address that, and I'm wondering if it would be, I know that this might be out there a little bit, I wonder if it would be possible for us to essentially set a separate rate, a commercial rate. Because we also have some businesses in town that don't put out any more trash than the average home, that wouldn't require anything more than weekly collection. I'm wondering if it would be possible for us to calculate, for staff to calculate a rate that would be cost effective for the city. I'm just going to make numbers up, but I mean, if we charge somebody, if we charge a business, $5 or $10 a month per unit, does that generate enough revenue for us to make it worth it while still saving them money? I mean, is there some middle ground we can find in terms of providing, expanding the level of service, or even reestablishing it in some cases? I mean, I know nobody has an answer right now. I'm just putting this on the table. Please, I mean, shake your eyes. I say so.
One of the things I've looked at is the ordinance for trucks to go on business property if that's
Rosewood is the area that when we did the over 8 units, kind of came in under an issue. As I remember, Rosewood's a very narrow street. In fact, our trucks have a hard time getting down that straight street with all the on-street parking they have back there. We said, can we come up with a location where we could take our trucks and dump these rollout carts individually, because there's just no room on the street for them. And from what I remember, there was no central location because they didn't want to have their residents have to roll their cart down the street and bring to a location. They'd rather have it out in front of their units.
Am I correct in understanding, though, that in the past we have, with the same size truck, traveled down these streets and collected, the old school things?
Yes, we've serviced those units up until February 1st.
In this street, it definitely would never lend itself to full automation because of the density. But
I think we need to look at the topography.
Yeah.
Because most of that, a lot of that doesn't have sidewalk, it's real steep. And when you start putting cans out,
there's physically no place to put these rollout carts within the curb.
There are a lot, we can look at it.
Right.
Again, if that was the whole purpose of
that. The rollout carts can't go into the same spaces that The old cans, I mean,
Not everybody used old cans.
Right.
People put out bags.
Put out bags and stuff. Which, and we have topography exceptions for bags already in the current ordinance, so it seems that could be worked around. I mean, I understand that.
It's a hard place to serve.
Yeah.
First of all, from our trucks, it's very tight. The roads are very narrow, and with all the on-street park, they can't lose the on-street parking.
Right.
So I guess it has a history of being a hard place to serve.
Sure. And I realize it's a hard place to serve. I guess what I'm asking you all is there a point where the fee structure makes it work this way? I mean, if somebody were paying this, I'm making this up for the sake of discussion, but if somebody were paying us $1,000 a month per unit to service that, we service it would make a really sweet profit. Now, that's a silly extreme example. My question is there a point in there where is there an alternative fee structure we could develop for what is essentially a commercial property that could also apply to even other commercial properties that they want service where it's worth the extra trouble to us because it's bringing in enough revenue.
Well, we would serve the housing authority because they're performing a function, the city, we actually fund part of their operation, so they're kind of another agency of the city.
Right.
From that respect, they're exempt from the 8/8. I would say that would be something we could work around because they're almost another agency of the city.
Even within the confines of the current ordinance.
Well, we have to such a degree.
Yes, but it's more the Rosewood location. David Sams, our superintendent, I invite him to come to the meeting. Maybe you could kind of give your 2 cents on that. Rosewood, why that's different than you. Because we do serve the housing authority with over 8 units all over town.
Sure.
This is just a unique.
In the past, under the old program, the way everybody parks down there, we would actually have to go in behind the cars and carry the trash out. But with the cars now, there's no way to do that. Because a lot of times you'd have to go up 3 or 4 car lengths, so you might pull in the carts, 3 or 4 car lengths all around there. So that's one of the reasons for that.
Right.
So, I mean, but as far as getting our trucks in there, yes, we can still get our trucks in there. But it's just getting to the cars is going to be the issue of it.
In terms of those topography adjustments, I mean, it seems that we already have provisions for that as well.
Can we talk about it and address it at the next meeting?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
We'll kick around a few ideas and see what we can do to work out with them.
That'd be great.
Okay.
And I got one other, on the same topic, one other question. A couple of businesses, I can't even remember which ones off the top of my head, they're setting out kind of residential levels of recycling. At what point is it worth it to us or not worth it to us to expand our recycling collection? I mean, you see it's how we're essentially collecting money. Can we, is there the possibility of expanding recycling collection beyond the confines of our current garbage programs? There are some places right now that are paying for recycling.
Well, if our trucks go in front of the business today and not, they don't have a cart and we're not servicing, a lot of places we're driving by their business already. Sure. So we've got kind of a crew going by there, so to speak. The downtown area and State